Hello folks, hope everybody is well. It's Untitled Chapter here, and I've been asked to speak about the coronavirus, so I'm going to give you my thoughts with some dates to watch out for. I'm basically going to focus on Rahu's role, as well as the Saturn-Pluto conjunction, which will soon be Saturn, Pluto, Mars, Jupiter conjunction in Capricorn. So let's get into this. Yeah. All right. So I'm gonna get into the analysis first, and then I'm gonna give you some dates to watch out for. I think one of the reasons that the virus has spread so quickly is a relationship that Mercury has been forming with Rahu in the past few weeks. They have been connecting by virtue of what we call a Parivartan yoga since January the 30th, and will remain that way till April the 7th. This happens when planets occupy each other's sign. It gives them both the strength to deliver results. Now, by itself, it doesn't indicate whether those are positive or negative results. It just means the strength to give results. Rahu and Mercury are both in air signs, Aquarius and Gemini. Now, what does air do? Well, air spreads. Yeah, and very quickly. Mercury, of course, signifies travel and commerce. And Rahu in Mercury's sign Gemini, again, signifies travel and commerce. And here Rahu's influence has been having an adverse effect on both spheres of life. Travel has been completely halted. Commerce, of course, has almost entirely been halted across the world and will continue to be even more severely restricted for a while. Now, why is this? Well, Rahu has been transiting in Gemini, as I said, in the nakshatra of Ardra, which is ruled by the fierce form of Shiva, the destructive force, known for tearing down structures. Rahu in Ardra can also bring life-threatening diseases and violent behavior in animals. And Mercury and Rahu connecting here has created very intense fear. Put a stop to movement and travel completely. This is, of course, a short-term connection that Mercury and Rahu have had, as I said, from January 30th, and it will end April the 7th, but it's responsible for spreading the virus so quickly. But the long-term and major transits that I feel that are really much more so connected to this event is, of course, as we said, Rahu's transit in Ardra, which started back in September 2019 and goes until May 20th of 2020. But also, the other major event that has triggered this is the conjunction of Pluto and Saturn. This conjunction can bring death, destruction, fear, sorrow, and pessimism, and has done so on many occasions in the past when you look at history. Pluto and Saturn went together, and when I say conjunction, I mean very close by to each other in the same sign. They've been within a 3-degree orb between December 6th and February 17th, so a very tight conjunction. And this timeline correlates to the spread of the virus worldwide. In between that time period, we had a powerful eclipse on December the 26th, and the majority of the planets were in Purvashad and Uttarashad nakshatras. We had another eclipse January 10th where I spoke about the Pluto and Saturn conjunction briefly and the impact that it would have this year. Now, what happens with the transits, especially eclipses, but even full moons and new moons, is that they trigger the already underlying long-term energies that we are experiencing and therefore manifest the events that way. Now, Pluto and Saturn coming together in a conjunction like this, of course, represents collective karma. Yes. Pluto basically rips through old, outdated structures and amplifies the fear and sorrow that Saturn brings. Somewhat similar to how Rahu operates when connected to Saturn. The bigger picture here, once again, is economic transformation, which we can already see hints of. There will inevitably be a new world order, as Pluto will ensure that the power paradigm shifts as the old structures begin to crumble. This is Pluto's basic, I would say, nature. It is all about power. And this theme will be the theme for the year, because we started with this conjunction quite strong, and now it's very, very strong in Capricorn. And those of you who have been following astrology or have an understanding of it, you know that it's all about patterns, actually. Now, in the past, if we look at what's happened, when we've had the Pluto and Saturn come together, we've seen world wars, economic busts, religious transformations. World War One began when we had the Pluto-Saturn conjunction in Gemini, in Ardra, in the nakshatra of Ardra, in 1914. Other major events that occurred during that time period included, for example, the American occupation of Haiti, the Mexican Revolution, the Easter Rising in Ireland. Then, of course, there was the birth of the first ever airline service at that time, as well as the birth of the Federal Reserve Bank. So, destruction first, and then a new world order. Then we experienced the Saturn-Pluto conjunction in 1947 in the nakshatra of Ashlisha in Cancer, another ruthless nakshatra having the power to destroy, but not quite as abruptly as Ardra. Instead, what Ashlisha is known for is inflicting poison and destroying its enemy through calculation and manipulation. This was the beginning of the Cold War and the Chinese Civil War. It was also the year that many nations got their independence from colonial rule, including India, in August of 1947. The most recent occasion that we had the Pluto-Saturn conjunction was in the nakshatra of Chitra in late 1982. Chitra, unlike Ardra and Ashlisha, is considered to be a softer nakshatra, bringing more gentler transformation. Back then, many nations were worried about nuclear testing, and the United Nations, as a response, held its first ever International Day of Peace. We also saw a positive transformation with the internet, where the TCP/IP became the standard protocol of the internet and therefore accessible for everyone. The first mobile phone was introduced in late 1982, early 1983, when we had the last Saturn and Pluto conjunction. In fact, the personal computer was even elected 1982's Person of the Year for Time magazine. So as you can see, history tells us that whenever Saturn and Pluto come together, we will experience dramatic events and a new way of looking at the world and conducting ourselves. Now let's talk about Rahu and Ardra. Last time in history Rahu was transiting in Ardra, we experienced an event of epic proportions affecting, again, the world economic order. And that was what? 9/11. 9/11 took place when Rahu was transiting Ardra, and Jupiter and Mars had joined the nodal axis of Gemini and Sagittarius. Very similar to the pattern we have now during the spread of the virus, because Jupiter, Mars, Ketu, Rahu were all in the Gemini and Sagittarius axis, just reversed. Incidentally, Pluto and Saturn at that time were in direct opposition, with Saturn in Rohini, which always brings a downfall whenever Saturn moves through Rohini, and Pluto in Jyestha, sitting right across from it. Now let's look at some key dates into the future. Rahu's just moved out of the Capricorn Navamsha, the most difficult Navamsha according to me during this transit. And that happened on March the 18th, so this is quite positive. On March the 29th, Jupiter enters Capricorn, and things will certainly shift for the positive as it moves out of the nodal axis. Jupiter tends to augment situations because it has an expansive effect similar to Rahu. It's no coincidence that we take 159 aspects for both of them. Now, there's a new moon happening on March the 24th in the nakshatra of Uttara Bhadrapada, which does not look good. But as I said, I think the situation will improve when Jupiter moves out of the nodal axis. So these few days between the new moon and when that happens, which is March the 23rd and March the 30th, I would say be extra cautious. Now the new moon has some blessing. New moon in Uttara Bhadra, it can give us the strength to endure the crisis. And Uttara Bhadra usually signifies moving away from the material world and into the spiritual. So it can also signify healing. Medical assistance in all forms will increase, but does not suggest that the problem itself will reduce. The other thing I wanted to point out here is Uttara Bhadra is actually also related to outcasts. So it can bring ridicule and harm to people you consider different or weird to you. It can also cause xenophobia, racism. What is xenophobia? Is fear or hatred of foreigners or anything that is strange or foreign. And we're already hearing about the Chinese being discriminated against, called names, being condemned for eating meat. This is happening all over in the States and perhaps elsewhere too. Xenophobia can result from isolation as well, which then results in fear. When you're isolated, you end up, typically you lack the knowledge and the empathy for those that are different from you, right? Because there's no connection. And that's what isolation does. And of course, when it comes to the combination of fear and that which we don't understand, or whom we don't understand, some will of course resort to petty racism and separatist tactics. So watch out for that. This new moon on the 24th of March will definitely trigger this energy further. The new moon is also making a tense connection to the nodes via Rashi aspect, or what's called a square in Western astrology, which is not positive. And unfortunately, Mars joining Saturn and Pluto in Uttarashad tomorrow, March the 22nd, will only aggravate the situation. So be vigilant the last week of March, and I would say also the first week of April if possible. The first real sign of relief will be when Mars moves out of Uttarashad on April the 5th and into Shravan Nakshatra. And then the second sign will be Mercury's movement. As I said, on April 7th, Mercury moves out of Aquarius and will stop making a connection to Rahu. But of course, moving into Pisces, its debilitation sign, many of us will still be grounded and communication travel will still be compromised. By April the 13th, we can really see some relief, because this is when the sun enters Aries, the sign of its exaltation. A positive shift for everyone, and perhaps at that time we will be able to see the light at the end of the dark tunnel. And of course, Rahu exiting Ardra on May 20th, as I said, life should be back to normal. Though if you see the true node movement, the state is actually April 22nd, so we can see a shift for the positive by the end of April, certainly. As I'd mentioned, both Pluto and Saturn are transiting Uttarashad. Uttarashad Nakshatra signifies later victory. The ruling deity here is Vishvadev or Ganesha, and the controlling planet is the Sun, which is currently in Pisces. Right? The Sun is transiting Pisces currently, receiving the glare of Saturn, and again connecting with the nodal axis by virtue of a Rashi aspect. Square in Western astrology, not positive, causes more tension. Now, Jupiter moving out of the nodal axis on March 29th is good, but again, the current position of the Sun in Pisces with its Lord Jupiter going from Sagittarius to Capricorn and being debilitated is not good for the Sun, who's already feeling the pressure of the nodes and Saturn via aspect. So when the Sun finally moves into Aries, into its exaltation on April the 13th, this will impact all the planets sitting in the Sun's nakshatra, including Saturn and Pluto and Jupiter. Pluto, of course, is amplifying the fear even more, as I said, and it's the fear that's making things worse. The collective karma here for us is essentially a wake-up call on all levels. We know that this virus, like all coronaviruses, comes from animals. Well, our relationship with nature, our relationship with animals, and even with each other has gone from bad to worse over the past decades, especially with technology ruling our lives. So now we will all really get a taste of isolation, where our ties to the outside world are extremely limited, and the one with technology is even more inflated. Of course, there are so many who will make the best use of this isolation, including self-introspection, reconnecting with our priorities, and eliminating the excesses from our lives. Yeah? That's what Pluto and Saturn symbolize. Understanding what or whom is important in our lives. Understanding the fact that we're all, in fact, interconnected. So moving away from separatist ideologies and tactics that have been dominating the political scene in the past few years is of paramount importance. The next few weeks, we need to stay cautious and vigilant. So I would say, please don't panic. Both fear and panic are contagious and can lead to self-fulfilling prophecies. Fear has spread faster than the virus itself and is leading to selfish and inconsiderate behavior all over the world. There are health workers, for example, in London that they leave their job after long shifts, go to the supermarket and can't find anything to eat because people are stockpiling selfishly. Yeah, that has to be managed. If we put this whole thing into perspective, it is a virus. And once a vaccine is uncovered, it will be managed. Majority of people will recover in a few days. The symptoms can be from mild to severe. It depends on the person. And the death rate reported is less than 2%, with the majority of deaths being elderly or those with underlying health conditions. So that's the reality. Now, for some simple tips at home. For now, it's important to strengthen our immune system with herbs. Vitamin D is good. Sunshine if you get it. Go out for a walk by yourself. Avoid eating red meat, especially beef. It's also connected to ardra. Oh yes, a perfectly simple remedy. And that is gargling with warm boiled water mixed with salt. If you don't have salt, vinegar, you can use vinegar. At least 3 to 4 minutes per day. This is an age-old remedy and works wonders. Viruses can incubate, and this one apparently has an average incubation time of 5 days. So we may not get the symptoms for some time, so make sure to do this every day as it prevents the virus from traveling further into your body. Get lots and lots of sleep and lots of water. Keep warm if you're in colder climates. Scarves and gloves for sure. Warm teas with turmeric and ginger are also very good. Minimize the news intake. Difficult to do, but this is very important. And hopefully the weather will get warmer, because that will not only boost morale, but control the spread of the virus. Yeah. Stay safe, everyone. All the best.